I think of it as like, you've seen it in the films where it's like the witch or the oracle, they're blind. Their eyes are up here. It's just white.
Rolling back in their head.
Exactly. And they're telling you they see the vision and all this. And,
Yeah.
it's like that's what this energy is.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's like, well, I still have to ask the person. Like, okay.
You still have to get in the car, go to the psychic, and ask them the question.
Well, I
Right.
mean, yes. But what I'm saying is it's sort of like, Gabriella, I've been having this intuition about you and our relationship, and maybe it's just fantasy, I don't know, but I need to ask you some questions. Because otherwise, I'm just sort of lost in the ocean, where you're not even on the surface of the ocean. You're in the ocean, and you're trying to find your way to the surface, and you're actually swimming deeper. Than to the surface. And so the question is kind of the lifeline to reality. So if you're having this intuitive hit, follow up with a question to back up your intuition with fact.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit, a podcast exploring the intersection of Western astrology and Jungian psychology. Astrology is a language that communicates how the planets and stars influence life on Earth, while psychology helps us navigate both conscious and unconscious experiences. Together, these tools offer the potential for self-understanding, growth, and transformation. Join astrologer Scott Tajarian and me, psychotherapist Gabriella Durso.
I think it was about a week ago you had asked, why are we going through this right now? And we're coming to the close of Pisces, the sun in Pisces. This is the last full week of the sun in Pisces. And I think it's really important this last full week to dive deep, to face the demons, really reflect upon the guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame that you are experiencing within yourself, and show yourself compassion so you can integrate those thought patterns and memories with understanding, forgiveness, and love. But this week we're going to start with a transit that doesn't involve Pisces. Though the highlight of the week is Venus transiting into Pisces. We're going to get into that later. But the first transit of the week is one that began last Friday, and continues until this Tuesday. It formed an exact sextile on Sunday, March 10th. And this is the week of March 11th to the 17th. Welcome to the weekly transit. Mercury, the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination, yesterday transited into the cardinal fire sign symbolized by the ram, Aries. And this is the reason why we're going through what we're going through with Pisces, because I think of Pisces is that final stage of the caterpillar in the chrysalis just before it breaks out into the butterfly.
What a great image.
And so in order to do that, we've got to cleanse our inner space. Because Mercury is transiting through Aries now, so we're speaking authentically, courageously, confidently, from a place of self-love. But the shadow side of that is speaking from a place of fear, arrogance, aggressiveness. Now, the sextile that Mercury is forming is with Pluto, the god of death, lord of the underworld, the planet of transformation in the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bearer Aquarius. This is sort of the initiation that every planet transiting through a fixed sign, air sign, or fire sign is going to receive from now until early September. Because when it transits into a new sign, the first planet that it aligns with is Pluto. So you think about Pluto, transformation, Aquarius, the community, the group, the club, the organization, the social network, the social cause, the sign that represents individuality, what makes you unique. Aries is the sign that also, in a sense, represents individuality, individuation, We think about Carl Jung and how Carl Jung was or is a North Node in Aries. So his soul's purpose was to individuate, which is why that was his thing.
Yeah, that's why he felt so strongly about talking about that process.
So Aquarius is taking that Aries energy of who you are, and it brings it to the community. Who are you in the community? Who are you in the group construct?
And that's kind of the part I think that Jung was missing.
Tell me.
Like, he was focused on the process of individuating in terms of your personal journey. But I didn't, and I could be just missing this step if he had this awareness. But to my understanding, he didn't include the importance of the part, once you're individuated, of coming back to the group.
Right.
I don't think that was part of his understanding of the process.
Right.
It wasn't important for him.
Yes.
And that could be because of just his natal chart and how he understood his own life's work. But I think that's really interesting to consider how maybe that, as we understand it now, with the consciousness we have now around these transits, specifically Pluto and Aquarius, that are helping us understand the importance of coming back to the community once you've done work on yourself.
So it's like you individuate, you recognize who you are separate from the group, and then you can come back to the group stronger because you're confident in who you are as an individual. And from that place, you truly have something special or unique to offer the group.
Absolutely. And you can also have a healthier, more boundaried relationship with the group because you're clear on who you are.
Exactly. You're not trying to assimilate to the group. There's no need to assimilate to the group. You just are who you are, and you don't have to be something that you're not in order to fit in.
Exactly. And you're also, we talked a couple weeks ago about this term differentiation, which in some ways is synonymous with individuation because you're finding out how are you different from the people that you're around.
Yes.
So once you've been able to differentiate through that process of individuation, you can come back and you're not threatened anymore.
Yes.
By the group, and you're not feeling kind of overly persuaded by the group. You're not confused about who you are. Like you might be if you stayed in the group the whole time.
Totally. I think once you figure out how you're different from the group, it's at that point you can have a clearer understanding of how you fit in to the group because you're fitting in as yourself.
Right.
And not as something that is not you, but you're trying to be the thing that you think the group needs in order to fit in.
Well, I think of it as like maybe an image of this would be a puzzle. And if you're not differentiated, like all the puzzle pieces are the same shape and so they don't fit together in a meaningful way.
Great analogy.
But if you're differentiated, you come back and you're curved here, you're sharp there. You've got your edges that are shaped to represent who you are and the clarity you found in that process. And then you can come back and find out where you fit in that larger puzzle.
Exactly. Every puzzle piece is unique. It's not like this one puzzle piece can fit here or there or any place in the puzzle. It can only fit where it fits. So it is unique in the whole structure of the puzzle and all the different pieces, but it is essential to the overall picture of the puzzle.
It is. And I think too, maybe just the process for those of us who have done puzzles in the past, if you do one of those like 1,000-piece puzzles, it's a lot of work to find out where things fit. And I think that can be also a metaphor for the experience of finding your community or finding where you fit. You have to try on, does it go here? Does it go there? No, I think it's over here. You know, there's a lot of effort that goes into the process, whether it's literally the process of finding your community or metaphorically this process of doing a puzzle.
Well, and it makes sense too, because when you think of Aquarius, it's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is the planet of work. It's the planet of responsibility.
That's true.
So with Pluto transiting through Aquarius, we are all being called to take responsibility for what our role is going to be within the group construct. And then we have to do the work required to work on ourselves so that we can be a better teammate to the rest of the group.
Absolutely.
And then Mercury in Aries is bringing that courage to the mind, where you can really think about yourself as the individual. And when you're so confident in yourself as the individual, then you can step into the group and find your place that is your place, not a place that is kind of you. Well, I'm going to try to be in this place, even though it feels totally wrong. That's not.
Yeah. That's think about the definition of, that term, fitting in, trying to fit in. It's exactly like, if you think about that literally,
Square peg, round hole.
Yeah. You're trying to, when you have to try to fit in, it implies that it's not natural fit.
Exactly.
Because it requires effort.
Yes. Exactly.
And I think what you're describing, this process of finding where you fit, that yes, there's work required. There's this Saturnian quality to it. But once you have found where it is, there's no question. There's no trying anymore to fit in. It's like that puzzle piece just fits right in.
Yeah. The work is not a bad thing. It's not it can be a bad thing. It can be a negative thing, but it doesn't have to be. When you are confident in who you are, and you understand where you fit in, how you fit in, and it feels authentic to you, then the work is something that you enjoy. It's something that you want to do. If you're on a team of people that are working towards a common cause, and you understand where you fit in, you understand how you fit in, you're authentic in who you are, you're respected and appreciated by the others within the group, then you are willing and you are inspired, you are energized to do the work.
Right.
It's not hard. It may be challenging, but it's something that maybe even you enjoy. I enjoy the work because the work is just me doing what feels right for me to do. So with this transit of Mercury in Aries, sextile Pluto in Aquarius, you want to be asking yourself, how am I fitting into the group? Am I being myself? Am I authentic within the group construct, within the community? Am I loving myself within the group? Am I appreciated by the group for being myself? If the answer is yes to these questions, then you're in the right frequency, you're in the right group. If not, then maybe there's something that you need to transform. Maybe it's transforming to a different group, or maybe it's transforming yourself within the group that you're already in so that they can truly see you for who you are. And at that point, when you do that, maybe the group comes back and says, "Oh my God, I didn't realize you had these talents. I didn't realize this was you. Well, you would fit in great over here. You were trying to do this other thing over there because you thought that's what we needed, but we really just need you to be you. And where you would fit in is right over here. Thank you for showing yourself to me, to us."
I love that.
So moving on to the second transit of the week, Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, transiting through the mutable water sign symbolized by the fish, Pisces, the sign where Venus is exalted. So Venus is in a position of power in Taurus, in Libra, because it rules those signs, but Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus is also in a position of power as it transits through Pisces. And it really makes sense too, because in order to be a good friend, a good lover, you need to have empathy for those that you're in relationship with. And Pisces is the sign of empathy. So if you don't have empathy for those that you're in relationship with, that's going to create challenge.
Absolutely.
And so from March 11th, Monday of this week, until April 4th, Venus is going to be transiting through Pisces. The last time Venus transited through Pisces was January 26th to February 20th, 2023. The time before that was April 5th to May 2nd, 2022. So think back to those dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around as Venus transits through Pisces. And of course, if you're curious to know how this transit or any other transit is affecting you directly, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. Venus in Pisces can present challenges for those with key astrological points or planets in Gemini or Sagittarius. Now, there's several reasons to understand why this presents a challenge. There's the technical reasons, which Gemini and Sagittarius both form a square, a 90-degree angle with Pisces. A 90-degree angle is like you're driving down the street, so you're going 55 miles an hour, and then you make a hard left turn without slowing down. That's going to create a lot of tension in your vehicle. You may even roll it over. So, there's that. Pisces is mutable. Gemini and Sagittarius are both mutable. So they all make a strong connection to each other. But Pisces is water. Gemini is air. Air and water don't mix. Sagittarius is fire. Fire boils water. Water extinguishes fire. But another way to think about it is Pisces is about getting deep. It's about empathy. And it's not to say that Gemini or Sagittarius lack empathy or are not deep. But generally speaking, the energy of Gemini wants to keep things light. It doesn't really want to get into the deep, heavy conversations. They're curious, they're conversational, and maybe glib, which can be offensive to Pisces, which feels the weight of everything. And so it's not funny to Pisces. Whereas Sagittarius is very direct, very blunt. It's like, well, I'm just telling the truth. But Pisces is like, but you didn't tell the truth in a way that considered how the truth would affect me.
I want to just highlight a couple of the words that you said as you were describing each of the signs and maybe add on my own interpretation. But from what I'm hearing, Pisces is feeling oriented and Gemini is more thinking.
Yes.
So that creates the potential for some sort of misunderstanding. And that can happen in relationships all the time. When one person wants to talk about feelings or process things from a feelings perspective, and the other one is more thinking oriented. So to me, that sort of highlights maybe the challenge between Pisces and Gemini.
Great point.
Pisces is feeling, that empathy you described. They can feel what others feel. Gemini can see the other side of things, but from more of an intellectual standpoint, which I think is a really different experience.
For sure.
And then Sagittarius, I would say, is more action-oriented than anything else, which
I think
predominantly is not a thinking or a feeling. It's more of like a let's go, kind of a movement, which is also a different way of expression.
I think that also, like, Sagittarius and Pisces are both ruled by Jupiter. But the difference between the two is Pisces is the final sign. It carries the weight of the 11 previous signs. So Sagittarius, being ruled by Jupiter, is the archer. It's that optimist. I'm going to pull back on that bow and let the arrow fly, and it's going to hit the target. But Pisces is like, yeah, okay, sure. I can see how it could hit the target, but I could also see how it could not hit the target. It might even hit something that you don't want it to hit and end up hurting that thing. And you can think of the most horrible sort of outcome. And that kind of, again, douses the flames of Sagittarius, because Sagittarius wants to keep things up. And
Sagittarius wants that movement.
Wants that movement in a positive direction.
Right.
It's the optimism. It's like, we want to go up. That's the movement. Whereas Pisces is like, okay, but there's also down.
And inward.
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking of Sagittarius has that desire to travel and to actually physically move and have their body be what experiences different cultures versus that Piscean experience is so intuitive and otherworldly.
It's the internal expression of travel. It's traveling into the cosmos of your psyche.
Absolutely.
It's not getting on a plane and going anywhere. I don't need to. I've got my imagination. I can go anywhere beyond. So if you were born with key astrological points or planets in Gemini or Sagittarius, there could be work to do in your relationships. For instance, if you were born with Saturn, the planet of restriction and responsibility, in Gemini or Sagittarius, at some point between March 11th and April 4th, Venus is going to square your Saturn. At that point, in the days surrounding that point, you may be charged with some work in your relationship. You may feel restricted or limited by your relationship in some way. But if you're going deep within yourself into that unconscious way of thinking, into the inner cosmos of your psyche, of why this is causing me to feel restriction or limitation, and you're doing the work, then you will receive the reward.
And would you say the work is to be more in those feeling states?
Yes.
Even though it might be challenging for the Gemini and the Sagittarius?
Yes. This is all about empathy in your relationships. Trying to feel what your lover, your friend, your business partner is feeling.
Well, it's an interesting juxtaposition to this individuation energy, which is all about differentiating. And this Pisces energy is actually asking us to become more, a term we use in psychology to represent the opposite of differentiation would be if you were enmeshed with someone, which is where you were, merging with them in a way that could be potentially problematic.
Yes, I mean, it is kind of a dichotomy, but I really think about it if you're working with the light side of the energy and you are working with that Mercury and Aries, confident in your mind, courageous in the way that you speak and communicate and think about yourself. When you're approaching from that place of self-love, confidence, courage, authenticity, it's easier to find empathy for others because you don't feel threatened by somebody else feeling something that doesn't have anything to do with you. You're like, okay, this person is feeling really upset about whatever. And I can see that, I can feel that, I can respect that and appreciate that without it affecting me in a negative way because I have this clear mental boundary, which is what Mercury in Aries is about. It's the mental boundary. That I can have this conversation with somebody else in the group, have empathy for them, but it doesn't affect my way of thinking.
So I guess, on a positive note, that differentiation is going to help you when you go to experience empathy, help you understand what is yours and what belongs to them.
Yes.
Which is really useful.
Exactly. Yes, this is the balance and the ebb and flow of the zodiac. How it goes from Aquarius to Pisces to Aries. It's like you have the most compassionate sign in the middle of a sandwich that is all about logic, and on the other side is all about self. And that's the beautiful balance. That you have compassion in the center, logic on one side, Aquarius, and the self on the other side, which is Aries. That creates the balance between the two. If you had the logic and the self next to each other without the compassion, then you're missing something. It's like you're missing a key ingredient. Because in order for there to be true cohesion within the group, in order for there to be true respect for the self, there has to be some empathy to see things from the other side. And there has to be that inner compassion with yourself. Because if you're not compassionate with yourself, then you're not going to be confident and courageous. You're going to be insecure. And then you're not going to be a good team member because you're going to be selfish.
And you won't be able to feel what's going on with the group.
Exactly.
Or even to be able to feel what's going on with yourself.
Yes. So I think the big takeaway with Venus in Pisces is how can I be more empathetic to those that I'm in relationship with? How can I feel what they are feeling? And then while working with that energy with Mercury transiting through Aries, it's having the ability to be confident within your own mind that even if your partner is presenting themselves in a way that is unrelatable to you, or maybe even threatening to you, that you have that mental protection to step in to the feeling without feeling threatened.
Well, Remember we've talked in a couple different episodes about nonviolent communication.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step in nonviolent communication is to understand your feelings. Because in order to understand your needs and ultimately to make requests to have those needs met, it has to start with a feeling. And then each of those steps feeds back into the next one. So I'm feeling this way because I actually need this. This is the need that's behind the feeling. And then you make a request from the other person that would help you get that need met that's related to that feeling. So from that perspective, the feelings are really fundamental to communicating clearly in relationships.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. You have to understand the feelings in order to have that clarity of communication.
Right. And of course you can communicate without talking about feelings, but typically that doesn't go as well.
Right. It feels like you're missing a major ingredient. It's like the elephant in the room. How can we ignore the feelings?
Yeah, you're not taking responsibility for your part. You're not really expressing what's happening for you without the feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're about to step into more feelings because the third transit of the week is sort of a redundancy of a transit that happened last week that we discussed, which was Mercury conjunct Neptune, the planet of the conscious mind, conjunct the planet of the unconscious in Pisces. This week, though, because Mercury is out in front, the Sun is coming up next. So the Sun forms a conjunction with Neptune from March 15th to the 18th, from Friday to Monday, with an exact conjunction happening on Sunday, March 17th. And as this is happening on Saturday, the Moon is going to be at 27 degrees in Gemini, squaring Neptune and the Sun. So the Moon's going to be in Gemini at 27 degrees, squaring the Sun and Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees.
So that's that conflict between Gemini as the thinking-oriented sign and Pisces as the feeling-oriented.
Exactly. I get this note so often from people that are Pisces or people that know Pisces people. And it can be a frustration at times because Pisces is the most intuitive sign, and that's a gift. At the same time, because of this powerful gift that people that were born with the Sun in Pisces, with the Moon in Pisces, with the Ascendant in Pisces, or maybe even Mercury or Venus or Mars in Pisces, they're relying everything on the intuition. And so they might get lost in the fantasy of what they think is going on without asking the questions from the people that are involved in order to receive the facts. Because Gemini is about facts. What are the facts? It's a logical sign. So this is saying this square, and you think of the moon, when you look at the moon up in the sky on Saturday, it's going to be split down the middle, the half moon, the tension, half in light, half in shadow.
I can always feel that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the tension around this is there is a fantasy happening right now. There's intuition that's coming up, and it's intensified because it's not just the Sun transiting through Pisces, but it's also conjunct with Neptune, the cloudy planet. So how can we really see? I think of it as like, you've seen it in the films where it's like the witch or the oracle, they're blind. Their eyes are up here. It's just white.
Rolling back in their head.
Exactly. And they're telling you they see the vision and all this. And, it's like that's what this energy is. But at the same time, it's like, well, I still have to ask the person. Like, okay.
You still have to get in the car, go to the psychic, and ask them the question.
Well, I mean, yes. But what I'm saying is it's sort of like, Gabriella, I've been having this intuition about you and our relationship, and maybe it's just fantasy, I don't know, but I need to ask you some questions. Because otherwise, I'm just sort of lost in the ocean where you're not even on the surface of the ocean. You're in the ocean and you're trying to find your way to the surface, and you're actually swimming deeper than to the surface. And so the question is kind of the lifeline to reality. So if you're having this intuitive hit, follow up with a question to back up your intuition with fact. And that's the challenge.
That also gives the other person, I think, some agency too. Sometimes being a really intuitive person, you can cross people's boundaries without maybe meaning to, because you have this window into their soul, into what's going on with them. And they didn't really give you the consent to know that much about them. So there can be, when you start to ask questions, you start to give the other person has
a voice,
but can also consent to what they'd like to share about it.
Sure.
Which I think that piece is important.
Well, I think of it as like, I don't know if this is the right term, but it's like projecting yourself onto someone else, your ideals. It's like when you talk about dreams, and when you have a dream, I may have last night had a dream about you. You were in the dream, but is it really you? Or is it my projection of you as I see you through myself? And so the way that you are behaving in the dream may influence my intuition, just like if I'm having a subconscious fantasy about you that is maybe somewhat based on reality, but it's not reality because I'm making it up in my mind. How do I bring that back to reality? By asking you the question. I had a dream about you. You slapped me across the face. Are you mad at me? Are you angry at me?
Well, this brings us back to, what kind of dream is it? Is it really just about your inner world? In which case, in this example, my role in your dream would be about you and about your relationship with yourself. If the dream is representing how you interact with the outer world, then the dream could really be about me. But I appreciate what you're saying about asking questions, because you're bringing your part of the knowledge to the table, but in that process, you're admitting that you don't have all of the answers. And so you're allowing the other person to have agency.
I think it's also important to remember that it's the moon that's transiting through Gemini. And so it's about asking the questions that are going to bring peace to your emotions.
To give you clarity.
Yes, that are going to satisfy you on an emotional level. And so that is the transit that closes out the week. Hopefully by receiving the answers that are quenching your curiosity, you will be able to manifest your dreams, your fantasies, into a reality that feels good to you and those that you're connected to. And that's the week. Shall we do some questions?
Let's do some questions. Okay, our first question comes from Cassidy. Cassidy asks, my therapist recommends grounding practices, but I find myself preferring to be in the clouds or deep in thought. My primal triad is Gemini Sun, Scorpio Moon, and Scorpio Rising. Curious on your thoughts or suggestions.
Thank you for your question, Cassidy.
What a great question.
I'm curious to know maybe a little more about your chart, because if you're a Scorpio rising, I'm presuming that your moon is either in the first house or the 12th house. My guess is that it's in the 12th house, since that's the house that would represent the clouds, deep depth in thought. It's that 12th house, the unconscious, which is associated with the 12th sign, which is Pisces. The Gemini Sun could be in the 8th house, which is the house of death, which is associated with the 8th sign, which is Scorpio. It might also be in the 7th house, the house of marriage, which is associated with the 7th sign, which is Libra. But your therapist is recommending grounding practices. Where's your north node? Maybe grounding practices is good for you, maybe not. Maybe your therapist is recommending something that works for them but might not work for you. But I would suggest, based on what you've written to us, that yoga could be a good practice for grounding yourself, but also maintaining that space for the depth in thought. I know whenever I've practiced yoga, it's usually about 35 or 40 minutes into the practice, I almost forget where I am. And I know my body's moving and I'm doing different poses, but I'm so exhausted that I'm just lost in thought. It's kind of like how I think I hear surfers talk about this too, that when they go out into the ocean and they're surfing, it requires so much physical exertion that it's like an unconscious sort of act. So there are grounding practices that will allow and support you to be deep in thought and in the clouds, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even like lying on the grass and staring up at the clouds. Mm-hmm. It's a grounding exercise. You're connecting to the ground. Your whole body is on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know also like what your therapist is recommending specifically as grounding practices. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like the recommendation of yoga because there's an experience of grounding and rooting, but also reaching and stretching. Mm-hmm. So it really encompasses and works with all of the directions. I'm also thinking of meditation can be an incredibly grounding experience. Totally. Even though you're also exploring your inner world, you're in a seated position typically. Mm-hmm. And so you can really work with the awareness of sensing and feeling into what you're sitting on and again, sort of working with grounding as just one of the components of the experience. I'm curious, Cassidy, of course, to know your North Node, because I think that would give us more information as to whether or not the grounding is connected to your soul's purpose on a really practical level. But I would also be curious to hear from you, what is it that's hard about the grounding? Like, what is it that you have to feel when you're grounded that maybe is uncomfortable for you? And that could give you some more information about what is it that makes that experience challenging or uncomfortable? Like, is there something that you're avoiding exploring that's associated with grounding? So that would be one question for you. What is your North Node? Would be another question. But I can tell from your Scorpio energy, and if your moon is in the 12th house, is that what you said, the moon?
It could be. It's either in the 12th or the first house. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be in the 11th house or second house too, but most likely it's in the first or 12th. Mm-hmm. My guess is it's in the 12th because of what she wrote.
Right.
In the clouds, deep in thought. Mm-hmm. That to me says Pisces.
It does. Yeah, so I wanted to share an image too that's coming to me. I'm thinking of you, Cassidy, as a balloon that's sort of floating up into the ether. And if you can think of the grounding as adding a pebble or a rock to the end of the string and allowing yourself to be rooted in the earth, but still maintaining that ability to be up and explore. If you can think of the grounding as acting as this pebble, this rock, or, if you look at the way that grounding shows up in nature, trees have to have a strong root system. The stronger their root system, the taller they can grow. So I wonder if part of this is just reframing like what grounding means and what grounding provides. Like you need the foundation of a house in order to be able to build the house. Like think of those really tall skyscrapers.
Sure.
So you might prefer to be on the top floor of that skyscraper, but using that analogy, you can see how absolutely you need a solid foundation and structure at the bottom. So from that perspective, the grounding could actually help you reach higher levels of awareness in terms of your ability to travel deep into thought. So some of this might be a matter of kind of reframing grounding for you. Some of it might be, we could give you a more specific answer if we knew more about your chart. And then there could be this piece around avoidance, or maybe there is something for you to learn in that grounding realm. Because we are, as much as some of us don't like to admit it, we do live in a 3-dimensional reality. Mm-hmm. We do have to interact with the earth, with grounding, with the planet, with like the material realm, which can be really, there can be a mundane component to that. But it is part of what we're here to experience.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I hope that's helpful. And if you feel compelled to share any more details with us, we'd be happy
Please do.
Yeah, to talk more. Our next question comes from Vanessa. Vanessa asks, "Hello, Scott and Gabriella. I love the podcast. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Thank you, Vanessa.
My date of birth is 7/9/74. I have a Cancer sun, a Cancer rising, and a Pisces moon. I have a lot of water in my chart. How do you balance that out?"
Awesome. Vanessa sounds like she'd maybe get along with Cassidy.
Yeah.
Because as a Cancer rising, Cancer sun, I'm presuming the sun is either in the first house or the 12th house. And the 12th house is that Pisces house. And then, of course, Pisces moon. So the Primal Triad is all water, mm-hmm. which sounds like Vanessa could benefit from doing some grounding and finding a way to connect to the reality. I think of that Cancer energy. And when I think of Cancer, Cancer rules the home. And where's the kitchen? In the home. So I feel like a good grounding exercise for a Cancer is cooking food, mm-hmm. enjoying a home-cooked meal, cooking for family, loved ones. I feel like that is a good way to find the balance in the chart because there's a lot of water happening here. Mm-hmm. So you got to find the land. So yes, Vanessa doesn't have any planets in Earth. There's air, there's some fire, there's lots of water. The North Node is in Sagittarius. It's probably in the 6th house. It could be in the 5th house maybe. But if it's in the 6th house, that would, the 6th house is associated with the 6th sign, which is Virgo, which mm-hmm. is Earth. So if Vanessa was born with the North Node in Sagittarius in the 6th house, then she needs to learn how to focus on reality.
Which is essentially grounding.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Be here now. Where are you right here, right now? But at the same time, finding that freedom within reality. It might be helpful for Vanessa to create like a spiritual practice where she can share her beliefs, because Sagittarius is the truth teller. It's about removing the filter, speaking the truth, sharing your philosophical view, opening up a channel. It feels like Vanessa's channel comes through the mundane functions of daily life. Mm-hmm. So maybe cooking, cleaning, whatever the job is that Vanessa has, it's finding a way to connect to the being in the present moment. In right. whatever it is she's doing day in and day out. Mm-hmm. And then sharing that perspective with others.
Yeah, and I like the examples of cooking and cleaning. I was also thinking of gardening. Things that are tangible. When I think of grounding, I think of you've done something and then you can see that reflected. You can actually see the changes. Like you can see that you've cooked a meal and then you can eat that meal, which mm-hmm. is another experience of grounding. So getting the body involved in daily life activities is inherently grounding, and engaging in the world in a way where you can literally see the fruits of your labor.
Cancer rules the stomach, and the breasts. The breasts feed, the stomach is fed.
Right.
The sixth house is the house of service. It's associated with the sixth sign, which is Virgo. Virgo rules the intestines. So I really kind of think of Vanessa. I don't know if Vanessa's involved in a church or a religion or something like that, but I could see Vanessa, working in a kitchen, volunteering in a kitchen at a church or a monastery or something, where she is connecting to her spiritual nature, connecting to that higher power, and being of service to those around her.
Mm-hmm.
And that would create the balance and peace that perhaps she's looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think too, Vanessa, and I'm sharing this as a Cancer rising as well, Cancer energy is very sensitive. So one way to seek out balance is to spend time around people who are grounded. Is really going to help ground you.
Totally.
And it's going to help you understand what that even feels like.
Hang out with some earth signs.
Yeah. I don't know if you're partnered, but making sure that your partner or your community, your friends are people who feel really grounded to you is going to help you. I mean, doing these tasks and orienting towards grounding will be supportive too.
Mm-hmm.
But the most helpful thing, I think, for that Cancer energy is to be around what you want to embody, because you're going to absorb that. That Cancer energy is a sponge.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you're a Cancer rising, the seventh house is in Capricorn. And that's an earth sign, obviously. That might be a good partner for Vanessa.
Yes.
Is somebody who's grounded and mature. Capricorns are very rooted in reality. So that could be a good partner, whether it's a lover or a friend.
But generally speaking, a great way to balance out your life experience is to look for the opposite qualities in a partner. So Vanessa, and for you, Cassidy, too, whatever you're wanting to embody, to look for those qualities from your partner, your friendships, employer, your job, your work, these different groups that you're a part of. I always remember that we learned as children by observing and watching and, picking up social cues, and those are most of what we learned was not taught to us verbally. So what can you learn from the people that you're around, and how can you surround yourself with people that you want to learn from?
Right on.
Okay, so let's wrap up there for today.
Amazing. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
And thanks to our listeners. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any others may be affecting you, or if you are interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. If you're interested in delving into the world of psychotherapy with Gabriella, you can connect with her at innervisionpsychotherapy.com. Music written by Ben Leinbach. From Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian, wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.